know that a few of the key witnesses have agreed to cooperate, including Mark Judge. But you'd expect that the FBI would at least interview those people anyway. The fact that they're going to cooperate doesn't mean that their testimony will necessarily be helpful to Dr. Ford, but it is a good start anyway, and you just never know what might come out of this investigation. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and we are already finding out that President Trump, he was really kind of on an emotional roller coaster throughout that day, Thursday, as this FBI investigation came closer and closer. He thought, as he saw the testimony of Dr. Ford, he thought, okay, that was very persuasive. But as soon as he saw Kavanaugh's testimony, he thought that, he was like, the Senate's got to vote now, and that was stopped by Jeff Flake for this FBI investigation. And President Trump said on Saturday the FBI will have free reign to investigate allegations of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh. But the emerging contours of the inquiry show now that it's limited scope. So it has some conditions that are going on here. So the White House will decide the breadth of inquiry through presidential advisors, though presidential advisors now are working in concert with Senate Republicans, said two people. One, a senior administration official. This is according to the New York Times, who spoke in the condition of anonymity. I want them to interview whoever they deem appropriate at their discretion, Trump wrote in a statement. He said he was going to deny an NBC News report that he was limiting the inquiry, that investigators were not permitted to examine the claim of Julie Swetnick, who is the woman who Michael Avenatti represents, a woman who said she had witnessed a severely drunken Judge Kavanaugh mistreat women at parties in high school, and that he had attended parties where his schoolboys gang-raped teenage girls. Investigators will interview one of the witnesses, a high school friend of Judge Kavanaugh's named Mark Judge, about Swetnick's allegations, two people said. So, yeah, and, what's your take? Because everyone seems to kind of have a different opinion on this Julie Swetnick allegation. I really wonder, what is your thoughts about this investigation? And will Mark Judge prove an effective character witness in your mind for any of it? Or?
It's really hard to say. He denied remembering the incident in a statement that he put out through his lawyer initially. But of course, that's not sworn testimony, and it's not the kind of testimony that, if you're caught in a lie, can be a crime and put you in jail for 5 years. Apparently, he was interviewed by the Senate Judiciary staff under oath, and Republicans have been claiming that was just as powerful as an FBI interview. But of course, the Senate staff is Republican-led and highly partisan, so it's unlikely that they would bring charges if Mark Judge lied to them. The FBI is a different beast, and people are more afraid of the FBI and lying in front of the FBI. So it could be that Mark Judge might be more forthcoming in his testimony to the FBI. But, he might think he can get away with lying, and he probably could. So I'm not that hopeful that he'll change his testimony unless there's other witnesses who can come out and do something to change that. There was Mark Judge's girlfriend at one point had been told by Mark that he'd been involved, or he'd seen a rape at one of these parties, and so it's this kind of stuff that it's just like at first Kavanaugh denied all the drinking, right? But then so much stuff came out about drinking at these parties and him drinking at Yale that finally he had to admit that he was a drinker and that he, drunk too much sometimes. So, things like that, the power of other people's testimony can change the really key people's testimony. And I think that's what is going to need to happen here for Mark Judge to be more forthcoming and tell the truth, if indeed that's what the truth is.
Yeah, he's really. It's really going to be interesting to see what role he will choose to play in this investigation, because it's going to be a lot more about that. So investigators, will interview one of the witnesses, a high school friend of Judge Kavanaugh's, named Mark Judge, who about Swetnick's allegations. So that's pretty much all they're going to get about Swetnick thus far, and it's going to be really tough, I think, to get this through in just a week. Democrats left out of discussions that led to Trump's order, tried on Saturday to clarify the scope of the FBI investigation with Senate Republicans in the White House. Senate Republicans drafted the witness list for the background check, according to two people familiar with it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell then shared it with the White House. So then it seems Deborah Ramirez, who is the second accuser in the New Yorker, Swetnick, the Michael Avenatti associated accuser, and Dr. Blasey Ford, will be the people who will have their things investigated, their accusations investigated at this point. Ramirez also has agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Also, though, interestingly, Swetnick's lawyer, Michael Avenatti, said on Twitter Saturday night that they had not yet heard from the Bureau. The four witnesses were Mark Judge, Leland Kaiser, who's a friend of Dr. Blasey's, and P.J. Smith, who Kavanaugh frequently mentioned drinking beers and lifting weights with in his testimony. So on that note, we are going to move on to these four kind of friends. Dr. Ford's friend, Leland Kaiser, and Kavanaugh's friends, Chris Garrett, Mark Judge, and Patrick Smith, all those who could be in the in the scope of the FBI investigation. So what do we know about PJ and Chris so far? Because we do know kind of a lot about Kavanaugh, and I guess we don't know a lot about Leland. So I was really wondering what is the public's knowledge so far on Chris Garrett, PJ, and Leland, who's Dr. Ford's friend?
Yeah, you're right. We don't know too much about them. Dr. Ford said that Leland was at that gathering, but she remained downstairs in the living room, and so probably wouldn't remember anything remarkable about that party and probably forgot about it completely. And in fact, that's what she's told her lawyer. But they were friends, but beyond that, I don't know much about her. The guy called Squee on the July 1st calendar entry was a boy that Dr. Ford dated for a few months that summer, and he's the person who introduced Dr. Ford to Brett Kavanaugh. I don't think, and he said he doesn't remember being at that gathering either. So it's a real uphill climb unless there's something that can jolt their memory. I don't know that there'll be any real new information about confirming when this happened and where it happened from the witnesses themselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, we can all hope that. So apparently, let's take a look at some of the quotes about whether this party happened, of course, from Blasey. There were two boys. This is a quote from her. There were four boys I remember specifically being there: Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, a boy named PJ, and one other boy I cannot remember. There. So yeah, Patrick Smith, PJ, is also the person that we know. So we don't know the fourth boy who's there. All four witnesses are alleged to be there. Are alleged to be there at the event said it didn't happen. This is Kavanaugh speaking about it. And Yeah, then so Kaiser, just hear about Kaiser quickly. Judge Kavanaugh stated that Kaiser, who's a high school friend of Dr. Blasey, refuted the allegations, while Kaiser told the Senate Judiciary Committee through her lawyer she does not know Brett Kavanaugh, has no recollection of being at a party with him. And then, of course, she said she believed Christine Blasey Ford, and of course, if she, as you said, didn't see anything remarkable happening, why would she feel the need to remember it 36 years later? She didn't hear about the assault later at the point. And the Kavanaugh's calendar on July 1st said he noted to have plans to go to Timmy's for skis, like brewskis, slang for drinking beer, with 3 of the people Blasey said were at the gathering where the alleged assault occurred. And apparently it was, Judge, Mark Judge, Tom, PJ, Bernie, and Squee. So that's when people are pointing to the this is when it happened. So that's pretty much all we know about that point thus far. And then on whether Kavanaugh and Blasey Ford knew each other, Blasey says that her group of friends intersected with Brett and his friends, and Kavanaugh said there was no intersection at all. I said, it's possible we met at some point at some events. I do not recall that. So how could the FBI kind of investigate and kind of fact-check this claim from Kavanaugh or Blasey Ford? Could they close the loops in any way that you can think of?
Well, they'd have to do it just by interviewing these people and getting their testimony. Certainly the person, the boy who was the connection between Ford and Kavanaugh could be interviewed, and perhaps he could remember that he in fact was that connection, and he could confirm Dr. Ford's testimony. Or he may not even remember that, and he may not be able to confirm it. I think that the FBI could certainly find, Timmy's house, and they could go to that house, that address. Probably someone else lives there now, and get access to the house, take photographs, look at the layout, where the living room is, where the front door is, where the stairs are, where the stairs narrow, as Dr. Ford mentioned. Is there a bedroom? And then across from that, is there the bathroom? And they could try to figure out if there's a match there. I think that Dr. Ford has provided a floor plan sketch of that house, at least to the extent that she remembers it. That could be important evidence right there. That would certainly bolster Dr. Ford's account of the story. They could also find out when Mark Judge worked at that Safeway supermarket. Dr. Ford says that he worked there, she estimates 6 to 8 weeks, after the incident. She ran into him at working at that store. So if they can find out from employment records that date back to that year, 1982, when he worked there, that could also help bolster her story. And while these are just circumstantial bits of evidence, they do make her claim, I think, much more credible.
Yeah, and they really kind of provide accuracy to the picture that she created there, I think, which can also be incredibly effective. All right, so now we turn our attention to some more of the Kavanaugh testimony. And, we also talked about Kavanaugh. We talked about his calendars and the high school yearbook that was being scrutinized under the searing lights of the Senate. where he sat accused of a drunken sexual assault when he was 17. The faded references to heavy drinking and sexual pursuits had taken on evidentiary significance, New York Times reports, and that he was pressed by senators to acknowledge their meaning. Judge Kavanaugh instead offered a benign alternative explanation. Apparent reference to throwing up from drinking could have referred to